Hey, time to go live. How's everybody doing today? I guess I'm a little early. I'm always early for everything, so I'll just wait for people to come on board. A few things to talk about, so I'll just wait for you all. Let me know when you come on that you can see and hear me okay, and we will take things in stride and go from there. So by all means, sign up. Let me know that you're out there, and we'll start taking care of business. Just going to slide this over here like that. Okay. So, all right, we're gathering a bit of an audience here. So, Andrea, thank you. Let me know you're out there, and we will get busy. So, I see comments. Oops. Let me just see here. All right, so just, because I'm a bit early, folks, I'm just going to wait for some people to join up. So by all means, throw your thumbs across the screen. Let me know who's out there if you care to comment in, and I'll be starting soon. Can you see and hear me okay? Sound is good, picture's good. I'm on a different computer, so let me know if that's okay. Hey, Matthew Jones. So it looks like everybody's okay. So just somebody write in, let me know you can see and hear me okay. I can see everyone signing up and getting ready to go. Excellent. I hope you brought some questions with you as well. So I'm trying this from a bigger computer, and we will get going momentarily. Just going to give people some time to come on because I'm on a little early, which is my nature. So hello everybody from all over the world, South Africa, North Carolina, where else is everybody from? Timmins, Ontario. Always reminds me of my buddy Trevor Timmins from the Montreal Canadiens whenever I hear Timmins, Ontario. So I'm glad people are signing on, saying hello. Don't be shy. Let me know you're out there. Were you all able to see the topics that I had in mind for today? So, just briefly. I'm just going to touch on a couple things and get going on that. So hopefully you've been able to see the topic that I wrote in. So that's not going to take too much time, but I'm going to talk a little bit about artificial sweeteners, fear-mongering, and a little bit review of WE EAT CARBS. And then I'm thinking next week I'll give you a little bit of a history lesson in nutrition. I'm a little bit of a nerdy academic junkie in terms of that and where these ideas about certain ways of eating come from. So next week I think I'll give you a little history lesson in the low-carb nonsense that's out there, how it's basically founded on shaky legs to begin with, and I'll give you a little bit of that, although that could end up being several breakfasts with the coach by the time I get through all the notes that I've amassed over the years in terms of all the low-carb hysteria and the untruths about it and the faulty logic behind it and everything like that. So hopefully everyone would like to hear a little bit about that, and I think that'll be the direction that I'll take next week, because it's really getting out of hand out there. So if everybody's ready, we're almost at a high enough number where I can take the reins and go. So here we go. Already getting a question that someone heard artificial sweeteners are bad for the gut bugs. Someone saying their feed is frozen. Anybody else having that issue? Looks like everyone's good, Laura, except you. You might want to try just restarting or something like that. So I'm going to have to kill the comments for a second while I read from a couple studies, case studies here. Toronto, welcome to board. And then I'm going to actually also read from my own book, right? Understanding Metabolism, the Truth About Counting Calories, Sustainable Weight Loss, and Metabolic Damage. All right? I'm gonna read you a little blurb from there on artificial sweeteners as well, but we've got a big enough audience, so let's get right to it. Hold off on your comments for about 5 minutes while I get through my screen here. So Sweetener update, and Andrea, shout out, thanks for sending me all these studies, although I don't need any more studies for about a year, folks. Everyone and their brother sending me studies to look at. So I'll give you the highlights of this page, and as usual, I will post this link in the comment section later. Let's start with the first heading, Sweetener update. Chronic aspartame and aspartame K use does not mess with your microbiomes. No link between bad lifestyle and sweetener use, and not very good advice from dietitians. Quote, there's no scientific evidence that any of the various forms of natural sugars replacements like brown sugar, etc., would be better than artificial sweeteners. I hear that a lot. People write me a lot. I call them the tree huggers, who think, well, if it's a natural form of sugar, then it's got to be better than anything that's an artificial sweetener, and that's not true. Sugar is way more damaging, potentially, than artificial sweeteners, and I'll get to that. And he writes, I assume this is a male, I'm not sure of the source here, but there's plenty of references. So, since artificial sweeteners, their non-existent impact on insulin, and more recently their effects on gut microbiomes, are recurring topics in the Facebook messages I receive, I thought it would be nice to briefly summarize potentially relevant results of some more recent academic papers which put a question mark behind some of the commonly heard anti-sweetener arguments, including the recently voiced objection they would mess up your microbiomes. Now I want to stop right there and make a point. Notice that he points out right away Facebook messages. This is the problem with modern post-fact world we live in, and nonsense world we live in, where people exchange stuff on Facebook and they think it's a fact. They don't do their recall, they don't do their research, they don't look for references, and these things swirl around social media and they get spun and they get increased. So he's basically, even though he knows better, he's saying, look, this stuff exists on Facebook, so I guess I better address it. And that's the problem out there. What I would call fake news, popular term these days, happens in this industry more often than not because people who want to make a distinction for themselves start swirling around nonsense and presenting it as if it's fact. So one of the things there, right away, he says, let's get right to the conclusions of the analysis of the research. No, recent intake of aspartame and other artificial sweeteners is not associated with overall gut microbiome profile in adults. Blah, blah, blah. The chronic exposure to normal dietary amounts does not appear to induce significant changes in gut microbiomes. That's at least what the results of a recent study from the Global and Community Health George Mason University clearly indicate. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of the study. It gets too academic. I'll go right to the next heading. No, sweeteners will not have you overeat. That's another stupid argument out there. Oh, I go on sweeteners, they make me hungry. No, that's just self-confirmation bias and more nonsense that's spread on social media. So, heading, no, sweeteners won't have you overeat. On the contrary, epidemiological data suggests people who consume more artificially sweetened foods and beverages have lower total energy, carbohydrate, and sugar intakes. That's from Hunt 2015. All right, as the authors point out, the effectiveness of low-calorie sweeteners for weight management, they studied low-calorie sweeteners and macronutrient intake among U.S. adults, and then goes down. I'm not going to describe the outline of the study, but you can be sure that low-calorie sweeteners, those who use more low-calorie sweeteners, weight management, all meta-analysis show they help to reduce subjects' overall intake, calorie intake, and thus propel weight loss. So that's a meta-analysis. We look at that again. Despite the fact these data are consistent with available published randomized control trials on the impact and use of low-calorie sweeteners in weight management, all of which show that they help reduce subjects' overall energy intake and thus propel weight loss. All right. So there you go. Not only that, but another study in 2015 found that U.S. adults who consume low-calorie sweeteners and thus care about their sugar intake and health have a higher healthy eating index profile and scores and are more physically active. Similarly, and this is a quote, low-calorie sweeteners common among certain populations with a lower burden of obesity and chronic disease. All right, so big headings in red, as you'll see when I post these notes. Yes, yes, and yes is what he wrote. Sweeteners will help you lose weight. Let me read that again. Yes, yes, and yes. Sweeteners will help you lose weight. The latest meta-analysis, and for those of you who don't understand academia out there, a meta-analysis is an examination of all the studies in a certain area and the overall conclusions, solid conclusions you can draw from that. So, latest meta-analysis leaves no doubt. Listen to what he said here. No doubt. And then, quote, findings from observational studies showed no association between low-calorie sweetener intake and body weight or fat mass, and positive association with BMI. Indicate that substituting low-calorie sweetener options for their regular calorie versions result in a modest weight loss and may be a useful dietary tool to improve compliance with weight loss or weight maintenance plans. So, the next conclusion. Actually, I'll skip that. It just talks a little bit about why there's so much confusion among dietitians. So here's the final conclusion, and then there's a whole list of references that you can look at. Overall, there is no doubt that the deliberate and strategical use of artificial sweeteners when you're dieting is useful. Again, there is no doubt, okay? He's not saying like it's possible or may have, like supplement companies use. No doubt, okay, that the deliberate and strategical use of artificial sweeteners when you're dieting is useful. All right, and then assuming that there's okay, so that's it. Basically, that's a sweetener update. I will later on post the links to that. And then we'll get to that as well. And then now I'm just going to read again from my book, backwards, Understanding Metabolism. This is my own book. I think I put it out 2 years ago, and it's funny how it's just the conclusions that I made in my book a couple of years ago, again, under attack when it first came out because ahead of its time. Now the gurus that everyone respects online are coming on board and saying the exact same thing, and because they have a wider following, all of a sudden it's acceptable. But the truth is the truth, no matter who's unfolding it. So let me read from my own book here. This is called Understanding Metabolism, folks, and I have a whole section on artificial sweeteners. Let me read you the conclusions there, around the story there. Around the same time, a U.S. population study linked the consumption of diet soft drinks to an increased risk of heart attack, stroke, and cardiac health, and then the immediate leap was made that sweeteners were the culprit. You've all heard this nonsense. But University of Ottawa obesity specialist Dr. Yanni Friedhoff said of the study, "This study is worthless and shows a glaring failure of peer review." So just because something shows up in a study, folks, it's not a fact, all right? Here's someone who works in the field, which I always try to quote, research, or track down, which I did for this book. Dr. Friedhoff also offered this, quote, "If the choice is between sugar and sweetener in patients trying to manage their weight for health reasons, there is absolutely no doubt and no question that the current state of the evidence would be in favor of using artificial sweeteners, of course." Period. All right? As far as this new claim that aspartame interferes with brain function, this was another one I addressed at the time because, again, this nonsense starts swirling around social media and people accept it as a fact. So as far as this new claim that aspartame interferes with brain function, this claim has been at best wishy-washy and quote-unquote theoretical. Dr. Ronnie Aronson, the medical director of LMC Diabetes and Endocrinology in Toronto, said this about risks of aspartame interfering with brain function. Quote, a large body of literature, folks, all right, for both children and adults has found no cause for concern about these sweeteners. Can I quote again someone who actually works in the field of endocrinology, folks, and brain function, please, as an expert? A large body of literature for both children and adults has found no cause for concern about these sweeteners. Dr. Aronson continued, in one such study, military pilots exposed to high levels of aspartame were given a series of complex cognitive tests which illustrated no ill effects at all. So that's from my book, Understanding Metabolism, the section on artificial sweeteners, and then I will post the little conclusion that Andrea sent me last week as well. I'll post that link. Any questions or comments on that, folks? Can we stop the fear-mongering on the internet and social media? Can we stop just accepting that these things are truth just because someone with a tribal following says it? That's how people gather a following. Whatever X is popular, go and say Y. That's how you get an internet following. That's not truth, that's not research, that's not doing due diligence, and it's doing a disservice to our industry. We got far too many fitness wannabes playing doctor online, and that's where this all happens. So you will see in my book, all right, that I reference people that are actually studying these things for a living, all right, people who would actually know. All right. Someone just wrote in, I've read that aspartame causes your body to release insulin. Also not true. It's also part of that study. I just skipped that area because it's not what I'm not talking about right now. I mean, all these things are on there, folks. The fact that, you can't be addicted to sugar. There's no such thing as a sugar addiction, all right? But self-confirmation bias tells you that is true. But in actual research, that's not true, all right? Scott says, hey, Coach, your insistence on people developing critical thinking skills is refreshing and appreciated. So many gurus out there. Yeah. And listen, here's, I hate to say this. I can't say your name, Mr. or Ms. Freedy. I've read that aspartame causes your body to release insulin, and then the next statement is, which is a fat-storing hormone. No. Insulin is a storage hormone with bias. That's all you can say about insulin. Insulin's a fat-storing hormone. No, it's not. People need to do their research and do their homework. We don't have bad hormones in the human body. All our hormones, folks, and all our biochemistry exists for a reason. They perform a function. You don't have a bad hormone, okay? You have stress hormones. You have anabolic hormones. You have catabolic hormones. They all exist to perform functions in terms of health. This myopic view, all right, that insulin is a fat-storing hormone is incomplete, and it's kindergarten at best. Insulin is a storage hormone with bias. It's an anabolic hormone, all right? It's a tissue-building hormone. We got to stop being anti-certain hormones and think that these hormones are bad for us. They exist in the human body. It's what allowed us to survive. Saying that insulin is a storage hormone with bias is more correct because it means you can store amino acids, glycogen in liver, in muscle cells, etc., where they should be. Insulin, it's a simplistic and myopic view to say insulin is a fat-storing hormone. Patently incorrect. But this is what goes on in the fitness industry and passes out there for knowledge. All right, we got to stop doing that. Ooh, cortisol's bad. Ooh, insulin's bad. No, they perform key functions in terms of regulating health. Let's get beyond that, all right? So, very, very important. Is Diet Coke bad for you? I've just addressed that. I mean, it's like people aren't even listening, all right? Is Diet Coke bad for you? Well, based on what I just read to you, folks, about artificial sweeteners, why would I even answer that question? All right? If you're going to tune into this show, listen. All right, and then, I mean, if I'm presenting you the evidence, abide in the evidence, all right? When it comes to science, you don't have an opinion on the facts. The facts are the facts, all right? The research is the research. Now, part of my healthy diet lifestyle is right after my dinner, I have a very large Diet Dr. Pepper, and then a couple hours after that, I have a very large Diet Coke, and I've been doing that for years, and so far I haven't grown a third ear or a fourth eye or had an arm fall off. So let's get to that. So no need to apologize. I'm using your comment as a way to make a point, because your comment Mr. Afridi or Ms. Afridi, represents what's going on out there, right? It's like, ooh, good and bad foods. Oh, good and bad. This thing's like, it's fear mongering, and it's an incomplete kindergarten understanding of very complex items of human health. And the fitness industry, wannabe gurus, need to stop playing doctor online. There's a reason doctors go to school and get medical degrees. Okay, very, very important. So. I don't know what Diet Rockstar is, Karen. If it's anything that rocks too much caffeine, then I'm not for that. I'm not for revving up and frying your adrenal system. You know, I've said this a few times, all these 5-hour energy drinks and stuff in the world we live in, that's just continued assault on the stresses of the body. Stresses of the body in the triangle of awareness, mental, emotional, and physical behavioral. If anything, we need a 5-hour calm the F down drink, all right? We need a 5-hour chill out drink, all right? We don't need to rev up our adrenal glands and fry them so we can keep up to our day. If you need that kind of energy drink to keep up to your day, that should tell you something about the pace of your day, all right? And that should require lifestyle management and lifestyle modification. All right, it shouldn't require more stimulus and more stimulation. All right, we need to learn how to be calm. We need to learn calm, peaceful energy is the way. That's what we call Tao energy. So, good. That was a great question, though. Fantastic question. Morning, Coach. I know you're a strong advocate of HRT. I am indeed, especially the Platinum Club members, people over 50. For those of you who are new here. Do you advocate getting a client's nutrition and training in line first before you consider the addition of HRT? Well, that would be a smart thing to do, James. Always should address the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. So I would always suggest that someone address lifestyle, diet, exercise protocol in line with those things. I've had a few experts on my podcast lately who say they don't differentiate between being 50 and 60 and stuff years old and training, and I find that really hard pill to swallow when all these people have suffered various ills and limitations of the aging process. So that makes no sense to say training's the same at age 50 as it is at age 40. That's just patently not true. We have a different physiology after age 50. Don't forget, as I said in my book, The Aging Proposition, and my book, Physique After 50, you know, it wasn't until recent human evolution that people even lived to be 40, let alone 50. So obviously there's going to be implications in the longer life. So now that we've added quantity of life to our years, I think hormone replacement therapy just makes sense to let's just add some quality of life to those years as well. If we're going to live longer, why not live better as we're living longer, since we have the option to do so. So good. Yeah, 20 minutes of silence and meditation a day. Meditation is a funky word for me, Scott. I know people who do what I call walking meditation. I know people who have several realms of meditation. I have coined the term active meditation. For instance, I explained in my book, former neighbors of mine on either side of me. On the one side of me, my neighbor had old cars he liked to tinker with, and he would be out there for hours with his toolbox and tinkering with his vehicles and tinkering with their engines. That itself is a form of meditation because you're engaged in something that's self-connecting and engages you back, and that can clear the mind. Anything that can clear the mind, as far as I'm concerned, is a form of meditation. We don't have to be literal about interpreting that term. On my other side, my other neighbor, former neighbor, they've both moved away now. Hope it's not my cologne. But my other former neighbor was out in the garden constantly, hours at a time out in the garden, toiling away in the soil. Now, to me, that's labor. That's not. But to her, that is a form of calm, relaxing, clear your mind kind of thing. So it doesn't have to be sitting, staring at a wall with your legs crossed. I mean, we need to get past that kind of interpretation of what meditation is. But calm, delivering calm energy to yourself, calm, peaceful energy, absolutely a must. Yeah, and enough sleep, of course. Protein intake every day, it's a minor concern, Mike. I've talked about this in articles and podcasts before. People focus on the wrong elements in this industry. It's not so much about protein intake as it is about protein sparing nutrients. So this leads to the next subject that I had in today's Breakfast with the Coach, in big capital letters: we eat carbs. Make sure you see my first Facebook post for tomorrow morning on that. Now, I don't know how much more evidence I can give you, folks. I was known as the trainer of champions, over 400 champions that I trained. Not a single one of them did a low-carb diet with me, not one. And I took everybody from beginner level. I took many of them right to national championships and beyond. I even trained Olympia competitors, and I can tell all of you that they all ate carbs. Recently, we've had supermodel Andy Sinclair on my Coach and Andy show. How many times he said he eats 6 meals a day? Almost all of them have carbs in it. We went Facebook Live a couple weeks ago with Krista Louise Fit, and Krista with one of the most enviable feminine bodies, feminine physiques that women could aspire to. What did she say? We asked her favorite foods. What did she say? Oatmeal and rice. Eats carbs throughout the day. Myself, I'm 3 decades into the cycle diet. My diet consists mostly of carbs, all right? Yet people want to follow Vogue trends, and Vogue trends start and swirl because of social media, all right? They don't have a whole lot of basis in the world where people actually do the research and people actually perform the studies. I've said this a million times, all right, that the National Weight Control Registry that monitors people who have lost at least 30 pounds and kept it off at least 2 years, monitored how they eat, what they did to do that, and everything else. Less than 1% of thousands and thousands of people registered on there, less than 1% followed low-carb eating rituals. The most common thing, all right, that was associated with sustainable weight loss was regular meal times, all right? That was the most common thing. So there you go. Hopefully that resonates with you folks, okay? So, and you know, speaking of Krista, I just want to make another point, and I'm sure I'm making it in the future because the Great Glutes at Home product was released this week, and thank you folks for making it very successful launch, of course. But Krista represents what I see is sort of a back to the future and a futurizing of the feminine form, okay? Muscle is the new sexy, lean is the new sexy, strong is the new sexy. All sort of in the last 5 years twisted the female aesthetic and led to this thinking that masculizing the female body was the new sexy. That's never been sexy. That's never been what many females can reach or should want to reach, and they torture their bodies trying to get there. What Krista represents is a celebration back to the female aesthetic, something that's realistic, something that's achievable, and something that is aesthetically beautiful in and of itself. And I think we're going back to the future. We're no longer celebrating the masculization of the female form. There's something that was inherently beautiful from the beginning of time about the feminine aesthetic, and we're returning to that. And I think it's an important thing, and that's why I chose Krista to be part of these products, because she represents something most women can envy, and most women can realistically aim for, and most women can look at, just like Andy's physique, and say, wow, that she looks great, all right, without it being too much, okay? Same thing. Dan says, I have, and so hopefully you people get that. You can agree or not agree. It's really up to you. But I think that's what I see happening, and I've always sort of had my eye on what's coming, not what's there. So appreciate all the thumbs and hearts on that, folks, because that's just commentary. That's not necessarily a fact, but that's what I see happening. So Dan says, I have a question on innervation training. When rotating exercises for certain body parts, do you have to surf the strength curve for all the exercises? Very good question. I ask you this because especially for some single joint isolation exercise, I think that going in the low rep ranges seems to invite injury. Yeah, I totally agree 100%, Dan. You won't see you won't see from me, I think, a program where you have like cable crossovers for 5 sets of 5. I just wouldn't advocate that. Or leg extensions for 5 sets of 5. You know, there's just too much shearing forces on the patellar for that. So yeah, dips is a tricky one. That depends on someone's anatomical leverage. But what you're asking about surfing the curve, you've done a little bit of homework, so kudos to you on that, Dan. That's all about program design. So whether someone surfs the curve, you can surf the curve within a workout. You can surf the curve over the period of a week if the program has balance to it. Like maybe you do limit strength focus early in the week, and then you do some 8 to 15 and plus reps later in the week for the same body part. That would work. So it's really about program design there, Dan, but that was an excellent question. So Lydia says there's an online coach recommending keto for his menopausal followers who are struggling to lose their expanding midsections. Makes me want to scream. Yeah, I'm not going to comment on what other coaches do online, Lydia. I got 4+ decades under my belt of experience at the highest levels of the fitness industry, and as the old saying goes, if you want to know the best way up the mountain, ask the man who travels it every day, not the person who stays at the bottom and studies it. So yeah, I think keto is nonsense. I don't know how many times I have to say it, and I don't care what the research says. Following a keto diet to lose weight, as I've said many times, is like using a chainsaw to open a can of tuna. Yeah, you can do it, but it's completely not necessary. So yeah. Laura Lee Finnegan says, not being anywhere near qualified for the cycle diet, meaning not being in super compensation mode, I assume. Is there a diet I should be following or just eating clean? I promise I'm still eating carbs. Well, if you're still eating carbs, you're ahead of the game there, Laura Lee. Not having the fear of carbs is a good thing. I would start everybody with just anyone who joins with me for one-on-one coaching. When they join, they get an intro package, and part of that intro package is just healthy eating choices before they get their actual individualized diet strategy. And it's basically, okay, let's start with generalities. And there's nothing wrong with starting with generalities, all right? We see more through a wide lens than we do through a focused close-up lens. And yet the industry continues to try to put that upside down. So lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of healthy whole grains. Start there, eliminate flour, eliminate sugar, substitute artificial sweetener, as I just opened this with. All right, substitute artificial sweetener where needs be, and you're ahead of the game. And then from there, if you want to get more exact, Laura Lee, then you know, you can order a one-time custom diet from someone you trust and believe in, and get something more individualized. But start with healthy whole foods, and you can never go wrong. One of those things that always surprises me, I see these nutrition stores everywhere I go and everywhere I travel, and it's funny that people can actually buy into the notion that something that comes in a canister, all right, is going to be healthier for you than something that was grown from the ground and comes from a tree. Apples, oranges, bananas, somehow this magic potion in a canister that has a shelf life of forever is going to be, engineered food for your health and fitness goals. Like, what a crock. I don't know why that's so hard for people to understand. It's just common sense knowledge. So, your great-grandmothers had it right. So, even back in the day, I mean, it's probably for the younger people listening, you didn't have this, but back in my day, my grandparents' generation was all about a tablespoon of cod liver oil. And, all these years later, guess what? Very healthy thing to do. Not the nicest tasting stuff in the world, but, all these years later, probably pretty healthy, all things considered. Is it true you shouldn't have more than 200 grams of protein in one meal? Again, we're talking about incidentals. So if you mean 200 grams of like total protein, or you mean 200 grams in weight of a protein food, those are different things, because 200 grams in weight isn't going to yield 200 grams of protein. But 200 grams of protein in one meal is a hell of a lot of protein. So your body can't assimilate and absorb that. It would put a little bit of overstress on the kidneys, I am sure. So very, very important. So When can dumbbell pullovers be used in physique after 50? Anytime you want to substitute it for back exercise, sure, can do that. How much does my one-on-one coaching cost? Go to scottabelfitness.com/coaching, or later I can put that, I'll put it in a reply. I can just put the link to the more info page on my one-on-one coaching. In fact, anyone who's listening who knows my website, if you want to just post the link to my one-on-one coaching more info page as we're talking here, and that would help out, I'm sorry, Mr. or Ms. Afridi. I'm not sure if it's Mr. or Ms. Maybe you can type that in. But, yeah, that's what I do. That's how I earn my living. So, yeah, you can do there. Hi, Coach. Can you speak a little more about the protein-sparing nutrients, and what is your opinion about the number of meals per day and the way of dividing nutrients on each meal? A lot of times I can only eat 3 or 4 meals a day from Portugal. If you can only eat 3 or 4 meals a day, then that's where you start. And balanced meals throughout the day is more important than all this magic window stuff that you read about, all right? People need to stop with the pre- and post-workout formulations, all right? Unless you're a professional athlete training at maximum work capacity for hours and hours per day, these things do not apply. It's balanced energy throughout the day that matters. Yet people love their magic formulas, right? Because it tries to convince you that you're more serious than the next guy, when really it's just mental masturbation, what I call the illusion of control. Okay, so if you can only start with 4 meals per day, divide your meals up that way. I think I've said this before: 1 part protein, 2 parts carbs, as in 1/3 starch carb, 1/3 fibrous carbs, but really it's how that balances out throughout the day that matters. But if you start with those general principles, then you can really never go wrong, and you should always eat breakfast. Very, very important thing. Yeah, people, the old days of metrics and all those things, and the marketing that led up to them. I'm going to do a future podcast on that, about the marketing nonsense behind how supplements worked, and the formula continues to work over and over again. That formula being that we found something unique that seems to do these following biochemical things. It's too bad it's not available to the public. And then they build hype, build hype, build hype, build hype, and then suddenly it's magically available to the public. Metrics work that way, Muscle Tech, Nitrotech work that way, all those kind of things. I mean, it's a formula that keeps working over and over again, right? Himalayan sea salt, or something that's, what did I see, infomercial, or was it just a regular commercial for some supplement the other day, which, what they tried to use on the something that we isolated and took from jellyfish that seemed like, how is that relevant? Yet to the consumer mindset, ooh, they found something in jellyfish. Jellyfish have nothing remotely in common with the human physiology, so it's a non-issue, right? But if you can tell people that something was harvested in a glacier on a full moon once every quarter, and that's what makes it magical, then you're going to sell 1 million supplements, right? It's that, like, the same as that liposine nonsense I've talked about in my podcast, right? Liposine, fat burning thing. They can say they've sold 10 million bottles, can't be wrong. Well, yeah, it can, because 10 million bottles sold doesn't speak to any kind of results. It just speaks to the consumer wish bias, that people will buy a fat burner on a shelf and then, okay, where's the magic? I'm expecting the magic. So the fact that you can sell bottles and bottles of this stuff doesn't really prove anything other than the desperation of the consumer mind. So, if you can claim I sold, 10 million bottles of something that has a substantial placebo effect, then you're gonna make that person rich. But I mean, the success rate, if there was a thing out there, a fat burner out there that worked on that kind of scale, there would be no other shelves of fat burners. I mean, that one item would solve everyone's weight loss problems, right? So if these things actually worked, these things, folks, are mediated and marketed by expecting consumer failure. That's how they get a repeat process. Nutrisystem, all right, Weight Watchers, all these things are built on the concept of consumer failure, right? So every so often they have what we call held out to be. And what that means is every so often you will get someone whose success in weight loss or physique transformation in spite of the supplements they were taking. But because they were taking the supplements, it's held out to be that these supplements were responsible for their transformations. And I told you many times, back in the day, I was an endorsed athlete with several supplement companies, and behind the scenes, what I really got paid for was to dial in their before and after people. So the before and after people never took the supplements, all right? They gave them to their clients or they sold them or whatever. And what made actually the physique transformations was my expertise. I took these people in 12 or 16 weeks or whatever time the supplement company gave me, and I dialed them in for photo shoots. And then, you know, they could say, as part of my, you know, with whatever supplement company, I was able to lose all this weight. There was even an article on me in an old muscle mag. Someone could maybe, I don't know if they have old issues online, but and the article in big letters is how I gained 45 pounds of muscle in 12 weeks by Scott Abel, and it was all like infused with you know, all this supplement gobbledygook. But what happened was I had back surgery, I had a double laminectomy, and I couldn't even walk. Okay, I was horizontal for weeks, all right, and I lost most of the muscle that I gained over my career. And when I was able to work out again, muscle memory kicked in, and I gained back all my atrophied muscle. But the article, I gained 45 pounds in 12 weeks, and it showed pictures and stuff, didn't say that I was hobbled horizontally and couldn't lift anything heavier than a cereal bowl for 4 or 5, actually longer than 6 months, because I was immobile before my surgery and then immobile for almost a year after as well. And yet the article played up, you know, the supplement victory on my road back to recovery and the rest of the nonsense that goes with the supplement world that had nothing to do with it. In fact, at my photo shoots for supplement companies, I talked about this on podcasts and stuff. Here's a little behind the scenes for you folks. We used to have what's called a spit bag, a garbage pail. So they would take photos of us biting into a protein bar or drinking a protein, and then just off the camera we would have a garbage pail we could spit it into as soon as they got the shot, because none of us actually followed or ate that crap. So there you go. You know, but no one wants to hear it, right? People want to believe in the magic that somehow someone's transformation had a lot to do with something that was in a bottle somewhere. And that's never going to play out. So, you know, happy trails for those of you with that kind of wishful thinking. That's why you get a coach, all those people. Someone just posted a link. Thanks, Perry. If you can get the link specifically to my coaching page, that would be great. Alba just chimed in, one-on-one coaching is worth every dollar. If you guys haven't seen Alba and Scott, husband and wife transformation, you should check out those pictures on my page. Pretty incredible stuff. And yeah, and kudos go to them for actually doing the work. So Lydia says, love the hard gainer workout, and now my 13-year-old nephew started doing them too. All right, great. Love reading stuff like that. So yeah, Laura Lee, you're on the right track. So just, here's a good point too, Laura Lee, when you said, I'm relieved to know I'm on the right track with the whole foods and avoiding sugar. That, yeah, a lot of people are on the right track. And the problem there, folks, is you keep jumping tracks. Okay, the problem there is you're doing something right, you're not giving it long enough time to work. We call that pinballing, right? Oh, when something comes into your Facebook feed, it says, you're eating breakfast, you're eating regularly, things seem that they're going well, weight loss is coming off, and then all of a sudden someone sends something in your social media feed that, oh, you should skip breakfast and try intermittent fasting. So you jump the tracks. We're on a nice, healthy, sustainable plan, and you jump the tracks. So that's a good analogy to use there, Laura Lee, that you're on the right track. The problem is, for many of you, you don't stay on the right track. All right, you keep jumping tracks. All right, and then that's where you end up confused and frustrated and failed and all those things. All the more reason to have a coach that can keep you on the right track and sustainable track. So remember, training and diet, two functions. are a must across the board. Must serve the body, must be sustainable, all right? If you're going to the gym and some kind of trainer or program you're on leaves you exhausted for the rest of your day, that's not serving the body and it's not sustainable. Same thing with your food issues, okay? Very, very important stuff. So protein shakes, obviously you're a new joiner here. Shakes and bars aren't healthy, all right? They're processed food. Let's call them what they are. Shakes and bars, folks, all right, are not engineered food. They're processed food, all right? And the old saying from Michael Pollan, if it comes from a plant, eat it. If it was made in a plant, don't, all right? All these things that are manufactured in factories, you're going to tell me better than whole food that's grown from the ground and harvested? No. So forget, and this is the thing, all these amateurs out there, they're walking around with their shakes, they're walking around with their amino acid, colorful rainbow colored drink in the gym. All of it is a waste of money. Like, I train the top of the top of the top. I was known as the trainer of champions for over a decade, right? None of my Olympia level clients use supplements. None. All right, they were endorsed by supplement companies, and I was always under the mistaken impression that people understood that. I was always under the mistaken impression that if you saw Michael Jordan on a Wheaties box, you really didn't think that he played basketball great because he ate Wheaties. All right, and I always thought fitness people got that, but they don't. All right, so fitness people are the biggest suckers out there when it comes to that stuff. Another study that I could have used today, I've been saying for years, I was attacked for saying, because the supplement companies don't like me talking the truth, even though I've got behind-the-scenes knowledge. When the branch chain thing launched and everyone was all, ooh, branch chain amino acids, ooh, branch chain amino acids in my workout. All right, well, now the research has come along. Guess what? They don't do anything. I've been saying that for years. Now the research has finally caught up to me. So here we go again. But, if you have a horse in that race, then naturally you're going to attack the messenger, right? If we can distract people and try to discredit the messenger, then we don't have to pay attention to the message. So you keep believing in your magic potions of protein powders and intra-workout solutions to buff up your muscles, and the only thing that's going to be lighter and tighter is your wallet. So let's keep an eye on that. So Matthew Jones, here's a good point, folks. Matthew Jones says, after starting the diet you sent me, the food was a lot more than I have eaten, but body fat decreased. Is this change in body composition, hormone optimization, or something else? You could boil it down to that, Matt. And I wish people, can I read that comment again, or maybe you can go back and read it later? Listen to what he said. After starting the diet you sent me, so he ordered a one-time diet, the food was much more than I have eaten, but my body fat decreased. Is this change in body composition, hormone optimization, or something else? It's metabolic optimization, Matthew. What I've always said, a lot of people write me and they've got nowhere to go with their diet, all right? They order a one-time diet from me, and then I look at how they're eating and what they're eating, and they're already in a metabolically compromised state. They've already got a depressed, suppressed, and repressed metabolism, and they want me to do something with that for them to lean out. Well, the truth is, any weight loss that you lose in a compromised metabolism isn't sustainable. Now, I could starve someone and have them lose weight and post them on my Facebook page before and after, but I'm not going to do that because it's misleading. So what happened with Matthew is, like many, is, okay, here's what he's doing over here. We need to optimize that metabolism. Remember, metabolism has to be fed in order for fat to be starved off. Metabolism has to be fed in order for fat to be starved off. People don't get that, right? It's like, oh, this is too much food. Well, you haven't even tried it yet. All right, try it and watch how fast. Yeah, it might be too much food for a week, maybe 2 weeks, so you lower your portions. Guess what? Metabolism starts to get fed, start getting hungry. People start writing me, you know what, 3 weeks ago I couldn't eat all this food. Now I'm hungry before my next meal. What's that about? That's about optimizing metabolism. That's how your body should work. All right? Look at any mammalian species on the planet in the wild. Go out and watch some mammals in the wild, and what will you see? You will see their seafood diet orientation. In other words, they see food. They seek constantly food, all right? They want to be fed, all right? And the same is with human metabolism, all right? You have to feed it. And that's the only way you can really turn off deep hunger, right? What I call tolerable hunger. So very, very good point, Matthew. I hope people will come back and read your comment after we post this. So Scott says, I thought table salt is refined and less nutritious than sea salt. I don't know. I like the chloride bond in sodium chloride, which is common table salt. I think the chloride bond has as much value as the sodium ion, but I mean, I don't know, that's deeper stuff. I don't know if there's any way of actually testing that. So, Mike says, I know you don't favor supplements. I'm not a fish person at all. It's mostly chicken and beef and protein sources. Would a fish or something used to get omega-3s or not that big a deal? In one of my books, I'm not sure if it's understanding metabolism or not. I wrote a chapter called "There's Something Fishy About Fish Oils." I think let me just see if there's something, if it's in here. Lots about the nonsense of paleo and how to spot diet scams. But I wrote, Mike, I wrote an article or a chapter in one of my books, Something Fishy About Fish Oil. I know from my own experience, the pain in my osteoarthritis in my shoulders was never subsiding, even with cortisone shots. And when I stopped taking fish oils, my pain subsided, which meant my inflammation went down. So who knows what's even in most of those fish oil bottles. So, you know, I'm a firm believer of being a minimalist. Everyone, you know, that knows I'm sort of, I wouldn't say anti-supplement, I just don't see any value in them. And people that find that from me, I get the yeah buts, right? Like, but, you know, I live in a cold climate, so I take vitamin D. Well, we covered vitamin D in my last Coach and Andy show, right? That now people are overdosing toxic levels in North America of vitamin D because of supplement nonsense and marketing. So I don't know. I would have to look at the rest of your diet, Mike, to see if maybe you're short on omega-3s. But I know for the majority of my career on a low-fat diet, I very seldom took in healthy oils, and I was fine at 260 pounds and 10% body fat, and I very seldom took in any oils at all. So during those times. So let me see here. James is just making a joke. Let me see. Eric needs a one-time diet. Well, you can order that stuff. Perry just posted in the comment section, folks, links to my services on Scott Abel Fitness. You can do that, and hopefully, people, you're on my Smarter Sculpted Physique podcast as well, where we talk about a lot of these things. Tony says, good morning, Coach. Tony's asking me about something I said years and years ago about enzymes or enzyme therapy had the potential for being useful. What are my thoughts on this now? Well, since that was well over 20, maybe even 25 years ago, Tony, and I will admit that back then I was a little shy. I was so busy with my physique career, you know, I was a little shy on doing my due diligence and the research, and now I would say most of that stuff is nonsense. I did my work on that, and since then, and you know, all this, you know, taking digestive enzymes and the rest of it, now people are going to swear by it because that's their placebo effect and yada yada, but the research bears out that it's much ado about nothing. So yeah, I wouldn't say I changed my opinion on that, Tony. I would say that I informed my opinion on that and came to the same conclusion that I usually end up coming with most supplements. Okay, there's another one I can cross off the list as being useful. So yeah. Dan wants to know, speaking of supplements, what's your take on creatine and beta-alanine? Creatine is the only supplement on the market that does anything worthwhile, especially as an adaptogen. An adaptogen is a substance that brings the body brings the body back to homeostasis. It's also, of course, has good tissue leverage, can make you stronger in the short term. So beta-alanine, no, I don't see any value in that. I think that's much ado about nothing, Dan. But, you know, remains to be seen. I try to stay open-minded about these things, but at the same time, I'm just skeptical. I've yet to see any kind of magic supplement du jour that does anything. And when you've been around as long as I have, folks, you see these same supplement nonsense over and over again. Speaking of supplement nonsense, Sherry's online, and Sherry, I want to, Sherry, you're reminding me here, I should tell people. How many of you out there have Netflix? If you have Netflix, throw some thumbs across the screen, etc., etc. And I want to speak just briefly in terms of things that have come and gone, but are likely to come back. If you live in Canada, you've probably heard of Isogenics, and then after that was Body by V, all these kind of things, multi-level marketing. Folks, if you have Netflix, please watch the documentary Betting on Zero. Is that what it's called, Sherry? If you can just give me, just write in the comment section what it's called. You really need to watch this, folks. You see how and why these things are marketed and how they work, and more importantly, how they take advantage of people, not just on the consumer end, but promising other people in the pyramid marketing scheme how they're going to make a lot of money, you know, etc., etc. So, yeah, just Sherry, just drop a line in there if you're still with us. I think it's called Betting on Zero. But folks, it was about Mary Kay, but the same applies for Isogenics, the same applies for Body by V, and I'm willing to bet within the next 6 months for a year in the fitness industry, there's going to be another magic system to follow, cleanses or whatnot. By all means, folks, later today or whatever, check that out. And if you want to send me some feedback on Betting on Zero, you can email me or whatever, and maybe we'll do something bigger about it. So yeah, that's it. So hopefully, folks, you got the message on artificial sweeteners. Stop the fear mongering. All right, there's no proof that artificial sweeteners do any kind of negative harm at all, and they're way better than natural sugars. Okay, so we've got to get past this. But I mean, stop being informed by social media hysteria. But you won't be. I mean, people won't be. That's the consumer mindset, right? Social media hysteria is the new fact machine. It's the new information gathering, right? And that's sad, and it's unfortunate. So that's a big deal. And then again, big capital letters, folks. We eat carbs. All right. I mean, how many other times can I present to you fantastic physiques built on the foundation of carbohydrate meals? Regardless of what the vogue trend is out there. And since when is diet about suffering? How long do you think that's going to happen? Tell me anything in life that has you suffering on a regular basis that you look forward to doing. Now, how sustainable do you think that is? So nonsensical to me. The reason I've had a great physique for 3.5 decades isn't because I'm a superhero. All right, the S on my chest stands for silly. So, you know, stop the nonsense. Something has to be sustainable, and the one thing that is sustainable is carbohydrate-infused meals, carbohydrate-based foundational dieting, no matter what you might hear online and no matter what study is presented to you. I just read to you, folks, from my book, Understanding Metabolism, where there was a study that suggested something about artificial sweeteners, but when I went to the expert, what did he say? That study is ridiculous and it's bogus and it wasn't even peer-reviewed. Just because something shows up in your inbox as a study doesn't equate it to being a fact. So in nutrition, if you have fear-mongering coming into your inbox, then stop that source from coming into your inbox. Now, I'll continue to try to educate you and give you the truth and the behind the scenes, but you have to want to hear it. All right, and what you have to want to hear is that the magic is in the method. The magic is in the lifestyle. No magic potions, no magic lotions, no magic pills. All right, just a commitment to a lifestyle that you can be proud of. All right, and there's no workarounds for that. All right, and that's important. Supplement industry wants to lay claim for a lot of things that you can't get with supplements. So the truth about artificial sweeteners and the fear mongering behind it. We eat carbs in big capital letters. Hopefully you'll see my first Facebook post tomorrow morning for another example of that, and my Instagram post tomorrow morning as well coincides with that. That's it for the day, folks. It's going to be no clouds in the sky and 35 degrees here today, so I'm taking Andy on some sightseeing that in the area that he hasn't seen before. So he's going to be here any second, and we're going to go out and greet the morning with some hikes and some lake views and some vistas and some waterfalls and all kinds of stuff to get that spiritual fitness in line, get that spiritual fitness hanging and banging. So all my best to you this Sunday morning, Breakfast with the Coach. Next week I'm going to educate you on how the low-carb fallacy began, some of the history behind that. Appreciate all the love and the hearts and the thumbs, and hopefully you learned something. ScottAbleFitness.com for my services, folks. Coach Scott Able here on the Facebook page as well. And thanks for tuning in. Without you guys there, wouldn't make sense for me to be here. And I will see you next time.